Hey guys, so today we are going to learn about curves in Photoshop and how you can use them to make your images look stunning. With that said, let's go to the monitor. Remember to like, share and subscribe and leave a comment down below. Thank you. Let's go to the monitor. We are at my computer screen and we have two images, this one and this one. Both of them are again taken by myself. Now we are going to learn about curves today. So, first let us understand how can you apply curves. You can apply curves in two ways, as an adjustment and as an adjustment layer, and as a filter, of course. So that's three ways. Let's try and do it as an adjustment first, and then we will see. Let's first duplicate the layer. Control J. Come on, duplicate yourself. Yes, now it's there. Now, once we have duplicated our layer, we are going to go to image, adjustments, and here we have curves, the shortcut for which is Control M. Once we do that, we can we can take a point and drag it, and we can do whatever we want with the curves. Now, this is a classic S curves that gives like a contrast to the image, as you can see here. The problem with this classic S curve or applying the curves, there's no problem with the S curve. The problem is with the fact that you have to apply it as an adjustment, and once you hit OK, there is no way of adjusting it. So what you are done, you are done. The only way you can change it is with Control Z, and then you have to start from square one. Another option is you right click, go to convert to smart object, and now you can see, since this is a smart object, we can apply filters on it. So let's go to filter and camera raw filter, which is shift control and A. And now that this is here, we can apply this here as well. Now we hit OK, and this is now completely editable. If you double click on it, it's going to come back and you can adjust anything from here you want. Let's say I want to make it a little moody. I drag up the shadows, bring the things down, and yeah, I think you can do that. The problem is this only applies to this layer. What happens if you want to apply curves to multiple layers? Then you use adjustment layers. And the thing with adjustment layer is, if you want the curve to apply to just one particular layer, you select the curve and select, just ignore me, it's awful at this point, yes. And you can just select, what was that? Where was I? Yes. You can add a clipping mask and make the adjustment layer apply to just one layer, which is exactly the one below the adjustment layer. So you can apply it to all the layers below it, or you can apply it to just one layer, and that choice is up to you. So in this video, we are going to go for the adjustment layer route. You can choose any way you see fit. You can use it any way you see fit. The basic principles are going to remain the same. With that out of the way, let's go. So let's hit Control Z because we don't want it, and let's hit Control Z again because it doesn't matter whether it's a smart object or not. We are going to hit the adjustment layer icon. We are going to go to curves, and here you have the curves. Now, if first thing you will notice is that the curves, there is a line that is completely diagonal and straight. There is no curve here. So why is it that way? If you see on the x-axis, the left side is the darkest part of the image and the right side is the brightest part of the image. So currently in this image or in any image, what this graph is telling me is that the darkest part of the image is dark because it's 100% black, because this y-axis symbolizes how dark or bright the image is. So the darkest part of the image is dark. So 100% blacks are 100% black. You can't go anything below 100% black. So this is at the lowest point. Similarly, The brightest point on the image is at peak brightness. So the 100% whites are 100% white. This is what this curve is telling me or telling anyone, or this applies to any image. Now we can tweak this. How can we tweak this? Is basically, you see there is an input and an output, and if I click any point, and it will show me what the input and the output of that image is. So let's say it's 62 and 62. So this is exactly where it was. I have made the curve, I have clicked it, and I have not moved it an inch. What this is telling me, that the pixels on the image, that is what this is telling me is the pixels on the image that has a brightness value of 62 is at the brightness of 62. So it's exactly as it was. Now if I move this point up, what does it say? Let's keep this as 62. Let's do 62, 62 for 62, and the output is 62. So it was exactly as it was. I have not touched anything. I have just selected a point. Now let's say we change the output to say 70, and you can see it moves up. So what I've told the software or the application is that you take the pixels that were at the value of that whose brightness value was 62. You take the pixels whose brightness value was 62 and make those pixels bright and make the brightness value 70. Now if we take anything below 62, let's say we take I don't know, 50, and you can see it has gone down, because what I've told the software is that take the pixels that has a brightness value of 62 and make them to a brightness value, bring them down to a brightness value of 50, which has made the image darker. And let's click another point over here, and you can see input is 196 and output is 184. So the pixels whose value was 196 on the graph has been brought down to brightness value of 184. So let's make the things same. Oh no, I have made it 796. Oh no. I need to make it 196. Yes. So now you see it's exactly on the diagonal, because I have set the application that the input, the pixels which have the brightness of 196 should have the brightness value of 196. So it's exactly where it was. If we drag this up, let's say we make this 210, maybe 210, and you can see it has gone up. So the input is the brightness value of the pixel that is on the image, and the output is where how bright or dark you want to make it be. In other words, the input is the value on the x-axis, the output is the value on the y-axis. So this is 100% white. So if you click it, it says input is 255, which is this pixel right here. Because remember, this is a color chart and this is 255 by 255 pixels, like color pixels, which is like the color depth, 255 by 255. So the input is 255, which is the exact pixel right here, and the brightness of the pixel whose value was 255 is 255. The brightest pixel is brightest, and the pixels which were 100% white is currently at 100% white. Similarly, if we click this image, this pick point, we see 0 and 0, which basically tells me the pixels which were 100% black are currently at 100% black. So now that we know, let's see what happens if we move the 100% blacks up. So now you see that the pixels whose value was 100% black, which is 0, has now moved up to 32. So what we have told the application is that move the pixel which are 100% black, or the darkest pixels of the image, and move their brightness up to 32. You can see the picture seems a lot brighter. And let's do the opposite. Let's hit Ctrl Z and make it here. Let's take this one and bring it down, and you can see it getting darker, and it's getting darker because the pixel with the input value of 255, which is the brightest area of the image, I have asked this application to bring them down to 158. So it's bringing down the darkest image, and you can see the highlights showing some darkening here because that's what I asked the computer to do. Now, with that out of the way, you know what input and output is. Let's understand what curves can do. The first thing we use curves is to add contrast, or brightening the shadows, or darkening the highlights, or brightening the highlights and darkening the shadows to add contrast. So we can do that here. Let's hit Ctrl Z again. Let's just make it like this. And if we take a point over here on the shadows and make them a bit darker, and take a point on the highlights and make them a bit brighter, and it adds a nice contrast because the brights gets brighter and the darks get darker. With that said, what else can we do with this? Well, a few days ago, in fact, some time ago, I made a tutorial on how to make a dark moody color grade. And what I essentially did there was move the darkest parts and make them brighter, and you can then click the shadows and make the blacks a little more black, and you can already start to see that it adds a bit a smoky effect the more we move over this way, and it adds a bit of mystery. And if we drag the highlights down a little, you can start seeing that rain kind of thing, like gloomy rainy kind of thing. So we can do this. But what we can also do is we can color grade with the curves. Okay, so for example, let's say we want to color grade with the curves, and how do we do it is, you see this RGB over here, you click it and you see the channels, which is red, green and blue. Now you go to red and you see this here. And one thing to remember is red is opposite of cyan. You know that there are like two color spaces. One is R, G and B. One is C, M, Y, and there is C, M, Y, K, but let's stick with C, M and Y. So red is opposite of cyan. G or green is opposite of magenta, and blue is opposite of yellow. So if we reduce the red in the shadows, we will make it cyan, because red is the opposite of cyan. You take red, you add cyan, and you can see it's already looking cyany. And if you add red in the highlights and you add red in the highlights, it becomes reddish. And if you drag it down, it becomes even more cyan. But let's say I don't want to add red on the highlights. So let's hit Ctrl Z, and we're just going to add cyan to the shadows. Right? And with that done, let's say I want to add yellow to the highlights. So the yellow is opposite of blue. So we'll go down to the blue channel and we want to add yellow to the highlights. So let's say I want to put a point on the highlights, and we'll drag down the blues, and that makes the highlights yellow. It's becoming bluish. Yeah, that's giving you a very what should I say, blue tint and blue and green tint. But perhaps this is not the best example to demonstrate this. Let's take the other example. Let's go here and let's go to adjustment layers. And first, let's duplicate the layer, Ctrl J. Let's go to adjustment layer and curves. And we see here, curves are here. And let's add some contrast. Let's make it like this. We can go to the red channel. And let's take this one from the shadows, and we can already see a nice little cyan blue water, which looks very good. Let's see if we can add blues to the highlights. Let's drag the blues down, and you can see the highlights are getting bluer, yellower. Sorry, you remove blues, you add yellow, So let's say we just remove blue from the highlights. No. How about this? There's a little bit of warmth and there's a little bit of cyan because we have basically made the reds go away from the shadows. While there is, but you can add red. So that's what I did. I just moved the reds up on the highlights a bit and you can see the color come back on the umbrella. While you go to the blue channel, and you can drag these up on the shadows. You can just drag these things down and you can add, you can keep the blues and you can just drag this out and the highlights will become yellowish. If you zoom in, you can see that the highlights on these rocks have gained a yellowish tone, and this is what we are going for. And if we want a little bit of magenta or a green tone, we can add green. So if we do this, it becomes very magenta. And if we do this, it becomes greenish. I think I like this. I don't know. Maybe up to here. So I think this is a good edit. And this looks a bit too green, right? Let's bring the greens down. But if I bring the green down, it looks magenta-ish, which is the point. And you can create, I don't think this is a like, it looks kind of like a very mysterious or very artistic abstract kind of thing, but I kind of like it. It's not very realistic to the situation that I was in, but I kind of like the color composition. As you can see, since we have removed green from the highlights, if we zoom in, you can see the rocks that were previously yellow have now become a bit magenta. So if we bring the green back right on the line again, and let's say we bring it here, and let's hit undo, and we can see everything gone. So if we go to the blues and just, let's say we put a point over here, and put a point over here, and then we drag the blues from the highlights, and we keep the rest just where it was, right? We just want to drag the blues from the highlights, not from everyone else. So let's keep it here. And let's go to the red channel and just make this red go away from the highlights and making it cyan. And if we go to the blue channel again and we drag the blues further down, and now this is a very drastic one, you don't want to do this, but this proves my point. This proves my point. You can see the yellowness of the rocks, but you don't want to do this. This is too extreme. Okay, I have gone too far with this. Okay, but you get the idea. The entire point of this is not to edit this image, but to show you what happens. So we can drag this down and just keep the reds where it was, and keep the reds over here, and drag this, and go to the blue channel, and basically do the same thing. We don't want to disturb anything but the highlights, and drag the highlights down, and you start to add, okay, no, you start to add these yellow tones to the stones. As you can see, the more now you go with the blues, the yellower it gets on the stone. So that's how it is. And if we just zoom out and see this, you can see that there are hints of yellow. And if it's too much for you, you can just go back and bring this cyans down a little, and you can see this again. Maybe keep it here, and you can just bring the cyans down right on the shadows. And now you can see the yellow on the stones even more because cyan is gone a little. And you can see now if we zoom in, what you can most definitely see is these highlight areas. I will just take my movement tool here. Just these areas which are highlights have become yellowish, and anything that has shadow to it, the sides of these rocks are now cyan or bluish. So you can basically edit, what should I say? You can color grade images. Why am I forgetting words today? Anyway, so let's take another image. Let's go to photos and pro camera, and let's see what we have here. Let's take, okay, let's take a portrait. Let's take this portrait. Okay, this was in Holi, and we will take this portrait and we'll edit it with a curve layer. So let's go. I'm going to duplicate this, Control J, and we're going to add an adjustment layer, go to curves, and as we know, we're going to add colors to it. So let's say we want to add yellow to the highlights. What we're going to do? We're going to remove blues from the highlight, and that will automatically add yellow. So let's see, let's make sure we don't disturb anything while we're doing this. We're going to add points so that only the part that we want moves, and you can see we are adding yellow to the highlights. And let's say we want to add blues to the shadows, so we can just go here and add some blues to the shadows, and there you kind of have it. You can see that there is yellow highlights and bluish shadows. And in case you can't see it, if we go a little bit extreme, we can actually let's add some saturation adjustments to make it even more obvious. Let's go hue saturation, and let's pick this color and go over here. Let's add saturation, and you can see the blues. Now you can see where the blues are. It's there right on the darkest areas, and this is just for demonstration purposes. You don't need to do this. This doesn't look good, but you can see that even on her hair and on this guy's hair, everywhere there is a shadow, the blues are more prominent. And let's make it 0. And if we pick this color, this color picker again, and if we put it here, which is yellow, and no, we don't want to do that. Let's make it 0. Add saturation, and you can see where the saturation of the yellow are, right, which is everywhere there was blue there is no yellow, and everywhere there is yellow there was no blue. So let's pick the color picker again, and let's hit here, and we're going to move the saturation up, and you can literally see where the colors were added. We basically added blues to the shadows, added blues to the shadows, and removed blues from the highlights with just one curves adjustment. And this is just to show you. Let's hit OK and delete this thing. Yes, I don't need this. So this is how you can do color grade images, and that's how you do it. And let's go to the red. Maybe if we just remove a little bit of red, make it okay. No, I don't want to add red on the highlight, so we'll just keep it on the curve, just on the curve. If you hear something, there's some commotion going on near my house, please ignore it. So we're gonna add cyan to the shadows, and there you can see it's a nice little color grade. Now we can go to RGB and just add some contrast, and I think this much of contrast is okay. Yeah. So that looks pretty good in my opinion. A little too contrasty. You can just readjust the contrast as needed. Yes. Okay. Okay. No. 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 I want you here. Yes. You can readjust the contrast as needed. So this is one way to use it. Another way to use it is the moody image, which I showed you right here. If you go to this and if you want to turn it into a very dark and moody and gloomy image, all you need to do is bring the darkest point up and that adds some kind of smoke. You crush the blacks so that it gives you very deep blacks while at the same time giving you that smoky effect. Make sure not to go too far because otherwise what you will do is this and it looks like a ghost image. So let's keep it over here. I'm going to bring the highlights down. I'm going to bring this point down as well. When we are making a dark moody image, the one thing we don't want is too much contrast, because if you think about it, when there is cloud cover on your head, the light is pretty well distributed and you don't have uneven distribution of light, and thus you don't get as much contrast. A cloud just act as a huge softbox. If you know what a softbox is, it's those giant things that are put on camera lights to make the light spread out. If you know, you know, right? If you don't know, then just Google softbox. And this is how you can get those very moody and dark, cloudy day images. And of course, you can just color grade this. You can just take reds, you can go red and you can add a point here and you can just remove the reds from the highlight shadows and just keep everything on the line itself, and now you have yourself a cyan shadow, which is, now if you go very deep you can see it, but otherwise you can't. And yeah, this looks good. And of course, if you want to go to the blues and you want to add some, I don't know, blues to the shadow maybe, and now it's increasing the blues on the highlights. We don't want that, so we're going to just keep it here. Now you have blue shadows and blue highlights, and yeah, I think we can drag this a little. We can drag this. This is looking awful. So what we can do is we can just add yellow to the highlights and just go back to the RGB and drag this down, pull this up, pull this down, move this up a little, and you have it. You have kind of a moody image. And if you want to add blues to the shadows, all you do is you click here and you just drag the blues. You just add the blues to the shadows and you remove the blues from the highlights, and you have a blue and yellow highlights, which is also split toning. So I showed you split toning on this a few days back with the camera raw filter and the color grading tool. This is how you can do it with just the curves. With that said, this is a long video. This will be the end of it. Thank you for watching. Tune in for the next one. Like, share, and subscribe.